Well, today we're going to talk about chapter 35 of the book of Jeremiah. This chapter, just so you know, is out of chronological order. This is one of those chapters that they've taken out of the chronology, basically. So we've been the last previous chapters talking about King Zedekiah and the siege of Jerusalem around 587 BC, or 588 BC more specifically. This is an event, a historical event that happened towards the end of King Jehoiakim's reign. So this is dealing with a group of people called the Rechabites. So let's talk about them for a little bit. The Rechabites is a group of people that many years earlier, there's a man by the name of Jehonadab Rechab, that he had decided that the people of Israel were not following the commandments. They weren't following God. They weren't living their religion properly. So he took his family and friends and people that would follow him, and they sold everything they had and moved out into the desert to be nomadic, to wander in the desert, living out of tents, so that they could get away from the wickedness of Jerusalem and live their religion in a more appropriate way. So if you're a fan of the Book of Mormon, that sounds awfully familiar. It should. Now, this is not Lehi. This is somebody who was before Lehi doing something kind of similar, leaving to go out in the wilderness to live their religion in a more pure way. So these are tent-dwelling Jews, basically, if you will. They're part of the tribe of Judah. They're part of the 12 tribes, basically, of Israel. So they're out living on the outskirts of town, not protected by a city wall. When Babylon marches down to take out the area, control it, Jehoiakim becomes a vassal state. Remember, he's the king at this time. He's a vassal state of Babylon, but Egypt is coming up to fight Babylon, so they're fighting. So Judah's kind of siding with Egypt, not Babylon, but Babylon doesn't have enough capacity to deal with Judah. So he's sending smaller groups of other vassal states, sending their armies to basically harass the heck out of Judah and try to ruin their army too. So that's what's happening. And because of these raids, the Rechabites are fully exposed to the violence of these wars and contentions. So they decide to move into the city of Jerusalem for protection. That's this story that we're going to learn about here today. So let's get into this. Verse 1. The word which came unto Jeremiah from the Lord in the days of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah, saying, Go unto the house of the Rechabites, and speak unto them, and bring them into the house of the Lord, into one of the chambers, and give them wine to drink. So go out to see them, and bring them in, and bring them to the temple as well, basically. So this is kind of interesting, because we don't have a lot on the Rechabites. In fact, Thompson made a comment about this. He says, this passage provides the most extensive information available on this remarkable group. In 1 Chronicles 2:55, there's a brief note which identifies their origin with the Canaanites. Nothing is known about them till a certain Jonadab ben Rechab is mentioned in connection with Jehu's bloody extermination of the house of Ahab in 842 BC, and his subsequent purge of the Baal worshippers who had flourished under the patronage of Jezebel, Ahab's Tyrian wife. From the notice in 1 Chronicles 2:55, we have a link with the semi-nomadic Canaanite clan, which was friendly with Israel's ancestors in the days of the Exodus. One of the distinctive features of the Rechabites was their belief in nomadism and opposition to all aspects of settled living. Thus, they refused to drink wine or to work at the cultivation of grapes. So they had a religious belief to not drink wine. Now, these Rechabites are possibly, there is some speculation, they're the precursors of a group called the Essenes. The Essenes are the ones that are responsible for the Dead Sea Scrolls out at Qumran. So there could be some connection there. The term Rechabite becomes a verb at some point, basically, where it's, or not so much a verb, but more of a kind of a meme, if you will, by itself, where the word, if you're a Rechabite, it kind of becomes a derogatory term that you are religiously zealot. So to Jerusalem, the Rechabites are these really super, super strict religious people. To the Rechabites, Jerusalem is a really, really loose and free-loving people that are totally going against everything that God wants them to do. So it depends on the perspective that you're looking at on those two groups. So at this time, basically, again, they were all seeking protection inside the walls of Jerusalem. So now the Lord is asking Jeremiah to go to the Rechabites and bring them to the temple to talk with, so bring them into the temple, one of the chambers in the temple, and give them some wine to drink. So this is interesting because this is not something they religiously accept or agree on, but is something that it's like a test. Basically, they're going to be tested with this. So, in fact, Thompson had this comment too about this. He says, one of their strong tenets is not to drink wine. Down the centuries, they adhered rigidly to the instructions of their ancestor and founder Jonadab. One day, Jeremiah summoned them to the temple in Jerusalem, set wine before them with invitation to drink. They refused and stood by their principles and the command of their ancestor. The obedience of the Rechabites to their founder's charge was presented by Jeremiah as a model of faithfulness and a rebuke to the people of Judah and Jerusalem for their disobedience and unfaithfulness to Yahweh. Again, a symbolic act was accomplished by the prophet's word. So really interesting that Jeremiah is going to set up this test, basically. God's telling him, go test them. They're going to prove their worthiness, and then Jeremiah will use that as an example to go to the rest of Judah and go, look, these guys adhere to their beliefs. They really believe what they believe. You guys don't. Come on, step up. So that's the gist of the story. So verse 3. Then I took Jazaniah, the son of Jeremiah, the son of Habaziah, and his brethren, and all his sons, and the whole house of the Rechabites. And I brought them into the house of the Lord, into the chamber of the sons of Hanan, the son of Igdaliah, a man of God, which was by the chamber of the princes, which was above the chamber of Messiah, the son of Shallum, the keeper of the door. So there's a lot of descriptions in verse 4. Let's break this down. So the sons of Hanan, this is a special room where this specific group of people met. Similar to how we have special rooms so you think of like the sons of Hanan, this is like a special ordinance room for a certain group of people, basically. Now, the idea, this term, man of God, the term was commonly used for prophets of old. Maybe Hannah was a very righteous man or a prophet to the Rechabites. This also suggests he may have had disciples or other leaders with him. So this the chamber of the sons of Hanan, he was a very God-fearing man and possibly, like they're saying, respected by the Rechabites. So it would make sense for them to be invited to go to that room. Now, it was by the chamber of the princes, and it was above the chamber of Messiah, the son of Shallum, who's known as the keeper of the door. Now, it's clear that the Rechabites found themselves in the midst of very important officials, all of whom, no doubt, knew what was going on. Jeremiah chose a significant setting for his symbolic act that day. So it wasn't just, hey, come try some wine, nobody else is watching. There are government people around that could see this happen, basically. So verse 5, and I set before the sons of the house of the Rechabites pots full of wine. So this wasn't a glass of wine. This was enough wine for them to enjoy, basically in a casual way. This is like setting the whole bottle in front of them. So pots full of wine and cups. And I said unto them, drink ye wine. But they said, we will drink no wine, for Jonadab the son of Rechab, our father, commanded us, saying, ye shall drink no wine, neither ye nor your sons, forever. So this was a century ago. They're still holding to those beliefs even 100 years later, which is good. Good for them for holding to their values. So verse 7, neither shall ye build house, nor sow seed, nor plant vineyard, nor have any. But all your days ye shall dwell in tents, that ye may live many days in the land where ye be strangers. So they didn't cultivate, basically. They didn't cultivate the ground, make farms. Interesting, though, wheat is seen as the seeds for fallen man to live on. So they didn't use wheat. They wanted to get back to a state of innocence before the fall of, and by not owning anything and living off the land. not cutting their hair, etc. John the Baptist is affiliated with joining a group like this. If you think of in the New Testament, John the Baptist is living in the wilderness, eating honey, and locusts and bugs and things. So he was kind of seen as part of this religious crazy group. That's the Rechabites. This is them, 600 years before John the Baptist, basically. They're precursors. So it's kind of, they try to be like a utopian society, basically. Live off the land, don't harvest, let the land give you what you need. They're strangers on earth since they don't want to be there. They're focusing more on their next life, going to heaven and being in heaven rather than trying to be amazing in this life, basically. So they're really distancing themselves from modernism, or what we'd call modernism back then, basically. So that's good insight into the Rechabites. Now, verse 8, thus we have obeyed the voice of Jonadab, the son of Rechab, our father, and all that he hath charged us, to drink no wine all our days, we, our wives, our sons, nor our daughters. Nor do we build houses for us to dwell in, neither have we vineyard, nor field, nor seed. So they rejected all modern customs, modern ways of life, everything, basically. The more rural they were, basically, they dealt with nature, God, natural processes, things like that. Verse 10, we dwelt in our tents, have obeyed and done according to that Jonadab our father commanded us. Verse 11, but it came to pass when Nebuchadrezzar, king of Babylon, came up into the land that we said, come and let us go to Jerusalem for fear of the army of the Chaldeans, for fear of the army of the Syrians, so we dwell at Jerusalem. So that's why they went. They're like, look, we don't like cities. We reject modernism. We don't deal with this stuff. But the problem is there's a couple of really big armies out there that could wipe us out. So we're here. We're tolerating modernism because it's saving our life, basically. Going into Jerusalem to live is not a compromise of their beliefs. This is important to think about. So they're not compromising their belief system. They are basically, it's a necessity of dealing with war. I want to believe what I want to believe, but I also, and I don't want, which means don't deal with modern society, but I also don't want to die. And not dying is more important, so I'm going to, not necessarily, they're not giving up their beliefs, but they're realizing that we're going to have to tolerate a level of modernism, basically, to live, to survive the day. So they stood a much better chance inside the city than outside the city, basically. So that's why they're there. So verse 12, then came the word of the Lord unto Jeremiah, saying, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, go and tell the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, will ye not receive instruction to hearken to my words, saith the Lord? The words of Jonadab the son of Rechab, and that he commanded his sons not to drink wine, are performed. For unto this day they drink none, but obey their father's commandment. Notwithstanding, I have spoken unto you, rising early and speaking, but ye hearkened not unto me. So this is basically Jeremiah telling people, they're keeping their covenants. Why aren't you keeping your covenants with God? Verse 15, I have sent also unto you all my servants the prophets, rising up early and sending them, saying, return ye now every man from his evil way, and amend your doings. That's repent, basically, and go not after other gods to serve them. And ye shall dwell in the land which I have given to you and to your fathers, but ye have not inclined your ear, nor hearkened unto me. So God's sending his prophets to teach you, but you're not paying attention to them, is the message. So verse 16, because the sons of Jonadab, the son of Rechab, have performed the commandment of their father, which he commanded them, but this people hath not hearkened unto me. So God is having Jeremiah contrast the Rechabites with the rest of Judah, basically. So verse 17, therefore thus saith the Lord God of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will bring upon Judah and upon all the inhabitants of Jerusalem all the evil that I have pronounced against them, because I have spoken unto them, but they have not heard. And I have called unto them, but they have not answered. So this is a key. If you do not want the judgments of God to come down on you in your life, just do what God says. Follow his commandments. That's going to be what he wants you to do. So again, this is probably around 600-ish BC. What's interesting is there is a possibility that Lehi has left Jerusalem by this time. They're gone. They're not in the area when this happened. So they might not have known all these specifics, basically, of what's going on here. Verse 18, in fact, that's probably part of the revelation that Lehi got was, you got to get out of town now. So that was keeping them ahead of these other armies and other bands of fighters. Verse 18, and Jeremiah said unto the house of the Rechabites, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, because ye have obeyed the commandment of Jonadab your father, and kept all his precepts, and done according to all that he hath commanded you. Therefore, thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, Jonadab the son of Rechab shall not want a man to stand before me forever. So what that means basically is the Rechabites will survive the siege. They will always have, because they've been obedient and faithful, as best as what they knew, they will be okay. They're going to survive this and be okay. Now the phrase stand before Yahweh is frequently used of men who serve Yahweh in some way, but particularly in the priestly service in the temple. What service was envisaged for the Rechabites is not clear, although a later tradition held that the Rechabites became involved in the service of the temple. According to the Mishnah 12, the children of Jonadab, son of Rechab, had a fixed day in the year for bringing wood for the altar of the temple. Other traditions refer to water-drinking sacrificers whose descent was traced to Jonadab. We do not know what happened to the Rechabites in the disaster of 587 BC and in the years that followed. Malchijah ben Rechab was engaged in the repair of the dung gate in the days of Nehemiah. He is described as a ruler of the district of Beth Hakerem, the house of the vineyard. That's kind of ironic. Such details suggest that this man had at least forsaken the Rechabite rule of life. Perhaps force of circumstances compelled many of the Rechabites to abandon or modify their traditional way of life. It is a pattern that many exclusive and traditional groups have followed down the centuries. Such modification of a way of life need not mean abandonment of the basic principles of obedience to the law of God. So they didn't abandon it because they're abandoning their rules and covenants with God. They are modifying what they're doing with the times that they're in, basically. So a fun story about Rechabites, this religious group, and how they were treated during the same siege that Judah was treated with. But they focused on keeping the commandments and Judah didn't, basically. So there's a good contrast there for us. So thanks for watching. Let's jump over to the next chapter as we continue back into the story of Jeremiah.